The Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, has now been with us for 3 years. It's gone through Supreme Court tests. It's gone through efforts to repeal. A huge chunk of it's already been implemented. And for the 85 to 90% of Americans who already have health insurance, they're already experiencing most of the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, even if they don't know it.
Good evening. Welcome to an exciting program of the Queen's Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight in the Queen's Grapevine, we want to talk a little bit about Obamacare. Most of you who have followed our program know that we did a program about a year ago when Obama was running for re-election on the second term, and he won going away. He crushed the Republican Party, and he's back as president as the second term. Well, in the first term, he talked about putting together a special care program that will cover over 44 million Americans who doesn't have any type of insurance coverage or any type of help, which a lot of Democrats and a lot of poor people think it's important. Obviously, there's been all kind of roadblock put in place by the Republican Party to put a stop and to squash that. Look, tonight when we talk about the Obamacare, we're going to find out how important it is and how it works, whether it hurts small business, whether it helps small business, and how important home care and any type of care is for you. We are lucky to have a special guest with us, again, Professor Howard Jordan, who has been kind enough to be on our program and this second term to talk about it. He had predicted that Obama would win, and I was laughing. And once again, he was right. Welcome to our program.
Thank you very much, Lee. It's always a pleasure.
Well, you know, I didn't think that Obama was going to win the last time he was running against the Republican Party. You brought up a lot of interesting things about the both parties that I think that it wasn't going to carry over because they were painting Obama as being weak, lack of leadership, in typical thing that all the Democrat thinks about is welfare programs and to help the poor. And again, you were right. He won going away. He crushed whoever the Republicans put in front of him. And I must apologize to you and say...
Well, let me tell you something, Lee. I can tell you something about Hillary Clinton now, but you may not like that either. No, but you know, one of the things that ended up happening with Obama, President Obama, and this idea of the Affordable Care Act is that people like myself were more supportive of a single-payer system, right? But we understood that given that this is a mixed economy, there would be a lot of people that would not like the single-payer system. Mm-hmm. But I think what is going to end up happening is that the Affordable Care Act will end up being part of the legacy, the great legacy that President Obama now has. It had its kinks. I'm well aware that it had its kinks, right? But when you're bringing in that many people, millions of people that don't have health care, see, unlike other services, I view health care very differently. I view health care the same way I view the fire department. If there's a fire in your building, it shouldn't make a difference how much money you have for them to turn it off. So if you're a sick person, right, in this society, as wealthy as it is, we should guarantee every sick person the basic health services that that person needs. That's what Obamacare started out as. Now what happened? Obama started, and what he wanted to do, he was leaning, Hillary Clinton had tried the same thing under President Clinton.
On the Clinton.
Right, but they were going single payer. They realized that it was unrealistic. So what did they do? They borrowed a Republican idea in Massachusetts under Romney. So part of the problem with all this Republican intransigence, and they voted 40 times against Obamacare, even though it's been upheld by the Supreme Court, and it's the law of the land, 40 votes in the U.S. Congress just to make noise because they know they can't stop it.
Well, you bring up an interesting point on that, and I want to go to that. Yeah. Why do they call it Obamacare, and why the Republicans are so much against it, knowing that it's going to help poor Americans? What is the logistics here?
Well, I think part of it, it's a political, philosophical difference I find among because I've talked to some of these Republican elected officials. First, they consider any time you're having the government involved in health care, they consider a government intrusion because they believe in what they call small government, and government should not be involved in people's lives. They want to get involved in abortion and other things and gay lifestyle and everything else, but they don't want to, they say you shouldn't get involved in health, right? So they say, look, anytime you put the government in charge of something, it's going to fail. That's their philosophy.
What are they basing that on?
What? They're basing it on basically bureaucratic inertia and administrative incompetence that a lot of government agencies have. And they would say, if you believe them, that that's what the founding fathers of this country believed in. I don't necessarily agree with that. But look, what Obama was doing is, and what affordable health care does is, it allows the price of medical care to go down. Senior citizens get $2,500 more in medical care, right? They've got the personal mandate. And the mandate, the individual mandate, means that they bring the price down by having young people buy into a secure system, an insurance system. So it's a private market idea. It's not like they try to make it socialist and all that. It's a private market idea. You have these competing insurance plans, right? And what they're going to do is they're going to compete to try to get people to buy insurance. Where the mandate came in was everybody has to pay in, because then the price will be too high. If you get some of these younger people that they're not sick, so they're not going to want to do it, because you start thinking medical when you get older.
Sure.
So what he was basically saying, it won't work. We won't be able to bring 25 million people into the system if the younger people are not willing to buy in, right? Because what he
So
added,
everyone has to really buy into it for it to work.
not only that, he went and gave the older folks or people that your kids could stay on your plan till you're 26 years old. So then if your kids could stay on your plan till you're 26, which I think is great, right? Then you got to understand that a lot of young people won't want to buy their own plan. So you've got to balance off those two, otherwise it can never work. You need more money in the pot so then other people can get insurance. What happened is the Republicans decided they were going to declare war on what became known as Obamacare. And it's sad, though, because I think if you would ask the average person, once these stuff locked in, like, for example, I'm a diabetic. That's a pre-existing condition. Before Obamacare, if I wanted to switch to another plan, they wouldn't cover it. They would say, Jordan, you're a diabetic. We can't take you because your health chances are less. Your lifetime, you may live less, etc.
But not under Obamacare.
Now under Obamacare, you got to take me. And that's a hell of a lot of it hasn't set in yet because they've had to postpone certain parts. But when the American public starts getting the benefit of Obamacare, it's going to be like Social Security in this country. People are not going to want to give it back. And that's what I think the Republicans are afraid of. While it's not implemented, they could demonize it. They said there were death panels. They went and said that they were going to sit in a room and decide who was going to die, scaring the life out of the American
Well, not only that, the Republican Party have tried to put an X on it in many ways. They're saying that Obamacare is going to hurt the economy and going to kill small business. Can you talk to us a little about it? How can it kill small business?
Well, let me tell you why I think that's silly. First, it gives small business a tax credit. So to begin with, you're giving small businesses a tax credit, you would think, and you're lowering the cost of medical care for a lot of those small businesses. So actually, you're helping. Now, the Accounting Office of the Congress, which by any standard is thought of as being an objective calculator of how much something's going to cost the government, right, has calculated that this is going to save the U.S. economy billions of dollars, because close to 15% of the budget problems in our system is medical care.
Yes.
Right? So if you can figure out a way to lower those prices, it'll benefit everybody, right? We had our senior citizens having to go to Mexico to get drugs, because the drugs, they could buy the drugs in Mexico cheaper, paying for the plane flight, than it would cost to buy them here. Right? With the Obamacare plan, their prices go down because they're going to be allowed to purchase the drugs from elsewhere. So then these people who are buying these generic medicines that, by the way, any person out there within the family out there knows that the medicine costs are the ones that are killing everything in terms of plans. So you're taking care of making sure that people that are uninsured get a benefit in a private market, in a competitive market between different insurance plans. You keep Medicare, you keep Medicaid, and then you have your private insurance. Your private insurer is not going to lose anything. And Obama kept saying the same thing. You have a plan, you keep the plan, right? So we have a plan here. You may be on Emblem, Empire.
Cigna.
Cigna, that doesn't change. What changes is the 30 million people that don't have any plan. So then I could go, if you're a person that doesn't have a plan, and you'll have all these small companies putting out information saying, look, we could offer you medical plan for cheaper. So the person that doesn't have it will be able to buy into a cheaper plan. Now, what did the Republicans do? The Republicans essentially said, they took a position of two things. We're going to vote against it even though it's the law of the land. They voted 40 times against it. We're going to go against, we're upset at the Supreme Court because Justice Roberts voted in favor. So two, now they've adopted what I call the non-cooperation approach. We're not going to accept this money. So you got governors, Republican governors saying, we're not going to accept Obamacare even though part of the cost is covered by the federal government.
Wow.
So what they're basically doing is hurting their own people. How are you going to be the governor of Tennessee or Georgia, one of those places? I'm not accepting Obamacare, so then you're going to shortchange other people in your state just to make a point because you don't like President Obama? And that's where that's where the rubber hits the road. When they tell people, are you going to shortchange the people that live in your state because you're not willing to accept this federal money? If history is any indicator, Lee, those governors are going to have a quick change of heart when they're not going to go publicly, when they have to worry about their reelection and tell people in the state that they're in, we're not accepting that money even though it gives senior citizens and people better medical benefits.
Very interesting. Again, we are here talking about Obamacare, the impact that it has, whether it's good or bad, and the way how we view it as a nation. We'll be right back on the Queen's Grapevine as we move forward talking about this medical health care proposal by the President of the United States of America. We'll be right back on the Grapevine.
On a wave of anti-Obamacare sentiment. And that is definitely what is driving what has been going on here for the past 2.5 years. They voted to repeal or dismantle Obamacare about 40 times, but now they're taking it to a whole new level, one which is risky and without a clear end game.
The way the House Speaker tells it, this is not about shutting down the government.
Our goal here is to cut spending and to protect the American people from Obamacare. It's as simple as that.
Except there is nothing simple about it. The government is set to run out of money in less than 2 weeks, September 30th. A House GOP bill to keep the government funded would also defund Obamacare.
Even 1 penny of Obamacare.
It's a strategy GOP grassroots groups spent all summer pounding rank-and-file Republicans to support.
Absolutely heard from a lot of our conservative groups over the break about defunding Obamacare.
The pressure was there. You felt it.
Oh, the pressure was absolutely there, but none of us like Obamacare.
But the Senate is run by Democrats who do like Obamacare. That's why GOP leaders privately resisted defunding it on a must-pass spending bill, risking a government shutdown. But thanks to conservative pressure, Boehner could not find votes to keep the government running without also stripping out health care money.
I know it's not been easy to be the speaker over this caucus, but at this point, have you just kind of lost control over the caucus?
Listen, we've got a lot of divergent opinions in the caucus, and the key to any leadership job is to listen. We listened to our colleagues over the course of the last week. We have a plan that they're happy with. We're going forward.
Not all Republicans seem happy.
Do you think it's a good idea?
We'll see how it goes. We can't let the government shut down. We can't be kamikazes, and we can't be General Custer.
Senate Democrats argue if the government shuts down over trying to dismantle Obamacare, Republicans will get the blame.
If they think we're going to back off, they're wrong. They're on a different planet.
You have turned, Mr. President, the right of every American to have access to decent health care into reality for the first time in American history.
Enter Obamacare, which seeks to extend insurance to all Americans so that traditional hospitals can collect money from all their patients. The truth is that this won't do anything to stop exploding healthcare costs, because when the bill goes to the insurance companies or the government, it inevitably looks like this. Only when patients are responsible does the bill look like this. But companies are beginning to revolt against a system that's eating away at their profit margins.
And we're back here in the Queen's Grapevine talking about the Obama administration, their presentation of the Obamacare, and with a little bit of time allowed, we probably might get into the immigration case that is also pending. And again, we have our special guest who happens to be Professor Howard Jordan, who has been kind enough to share his point of view about Obamacare, about the administration, how we feel. And more importantly, as we continue talking about these type of things, the behavior pattern of the Republican Party in terms that it seems like everything that the president present, they put an X to block it. So, you know, we want to find out, and that's the reason why we're doing this program, to find out whether the Obamacare makes sense, whether the Obamacare is going to help not only the poor, but everyone else. Whether the Obamacare is a big picture to look and help those who does not have insurance coverage, and whether, it hurts small business. You brought up a very interesting point. Governors and those who are putting a stop to the Obamacare, how are they going to explain that? Okay, how are they going to explain that to the community and the people that they represent?
Well,
and the reason why?
One of the things that the Republicans have done is they've created a mythology around right? Because this is the Affordable Health Care Act, right? It's already been passed. It's the law of the land. So the first thing is they give these voters the impression that this is not the law. This is the law of the land, right? And the Republicans are the ones that anytime one of the Latinos sneak across the border, they say the law is the law. But then this is the law. They don't want to obey this law, right? Which guarantees people certain rights of health care. So the first thing they do is they try to pretend it's not. Then they used to say that it's unconstitutional. So that was part of the second strategy.
Why is it unconstitutional?
Because they said you couldn't mandate that somebody have to take health insurance. The response of the Obama administration was the same way you have to get a driver's license to drive, right? You have to buy into the insurance, and the federal government has a right to insist that you pay, at least have an insurance plan. It doesn't have to be anyone in particular. The Supreme Court decided that already. So that's already out the window. So now they've already had 2 strikes against them. Now the third thing, the Affordable Health Care Act that says, if you adopt our plan, the states, we will give you resources, your state resources, for the implementation. So you'll be getting more federal resources if you adopt it. The Republicans say they don't want to do it because if they do that, then they can never go back. The clock can never be turned
But
back.
the Republican also stated that we're into the federal government's pocket if we do the Obamacare.
Yeah, well, part of the problem is that health care should be something guaranteed to every American regardless of state. So in that sense, I think Obama is saying the right thing. You can have your own state plans, but the bottom line in America, every American should have some kind of health coverage, right? And it's sad that this is the richest country in the world, and we can't guarantee people basic health care. And by the way, there's other industrialized countries that do guarantee that or do a better job of that. So the Republican is an intransigence. And what is eventually going to happen, they're smart enough to know this. They're basically, if it gets implemented, they can never go back. So they're trying to cut it before it gets implemented because a lot of it goes into operation in 2013 and 2014. They said we could stop it before then. Because once you get a benefit, you know that better than anyone. The way human nature is, somebody gives you a benefit. You're paying less for medicines.
Don't take it back.
You got a medical plan you didn't have. They try to take that back. Look what they did when they try to take back Social Security.
Exactly. How does Obamacare hurt or help the small doctor who have a private office? Because the Republicans are also insinuated that the doctors then will make less money also.
Well, look, part of the problem is this. If they had adopted another system, which would have basically taken out the insurance companies out, that was what the single payer was, right? In other words, why should these insurance companies be involved at this? Why shouldn't this be a direct relationship between the government and the people that are sick? Same way the fire department, if you got a fire, it's a service. These companies are going to start making money depending on who's sick and who's not sick. That was the idea behind it. But it was a free market idea, so they accepted that. Now what happens? A lot of the small businesses, they actually do better. These doctors are upset because in some ways, they're not going to be able to overcharge, right? Part of the problem is we can't guarantee you that if you're a greedy doctor, and due respects to doctors who do a great job servicing people, if you want to overcharge and you want to create tests and give people that they took tests that they never took, and you want to bill for that, I have a friend that knows a doctor. Doctor says, well, I know the Affordable Health Care Act is going to come, but until it does, I'm going to try to make as much money as I can. So what are they basically saying? They're saying that in some of these overcharges, they're not going to be allowed to do that.
There'll be better control in place.
When they prescribe medicines. You're prescribing medicines because you got a relationship with the pharmaceutical industry, and the pharmaceutical industry would rather have the doctor prescribe a drug that gives them more profits. So they take a lot of these doctors and they take them on these resorts and give them all kinds of service so they could, Affordable health care says, no, you got to give the generic drug and you get an increase of $2,500 in terms of where you can purchase your drugs from. So the doctor, in some respects, some of these doctors will lose right?
Wow.
Some of them,
Wow.
but they're going to lose relative. Doctors make the most of it, the most of the profession.
They'll still be in business.
They'll still be doing well.
Right.
But, you know, there's a basic reality that if you got to meet 30 million now, they can make it up for it by volume. Right? If they get
With
more
more
people,
patient.
more patients, more coverage. So what do the Republicans say? Well, look, if you get sick, now you're going to have to wait an extra hour to get your medical care. Now, the American public has a decision to make. If I have a family member that has cancer, muscular dystrophy, whatever the sickness is, if that person's going to be covered, but some people are going to have to wait longer for medical service, I think that's a sacrifice that the American public is going to have to be willing to make in the interest of the broader good,
The
right?
big picture.
Yeah, because you could take the position if you got a good medical plan, one of those, you know, Cadillac plans, you could take the position everybody else get lost if you know you got a good plan. But there's a lot of sick people, and the baby boom generation in America, those born after 1955, they're going to get sicker and sicker.
Sure.
You know, and you're already seeing it. You got all these folks that got all these diseases that are getting sicker earlier than their parents did because of how bad the atmosphere and the environment is. So how are we going to take care of that? How are you going to deal with cancer or diabetes and all this other stuff unless you have something in place that covers all those? By the way, there's still a lot of people that won't be covered. And that concerns me about Affordable Health Care.
Under what condition there won't be?
The immigrants, a lot of the debate over the Immigration Reform Act is to the Republicans trying to link it to the
Both
Affordable
situations,
Care Act.
right.
So they were, we can't go with the Affordable Care. They want to give free services to undocumented people that are sick.
So if a person who's not doesn't have documents, not here permanent, go to the hospital, they're not supposed to get any type of
Well,
service?
that's what the Republicans will say. The way it is now, every hospital has an emergency care. But
Right.
it's sad because it costs you more. Now, you go to the emergency unit and you're undocumented, they have to take care of you by law. So then it's going to cost $500, right? If they had given you a regular medical plan, it wouldn't count that way. I always tell this story. When I was between jobs once, I'm a diabetic. And I went to the hospital because my blood sugar was high.
What up?
Doctors took care of me, no problem. The law provided they took care of me. Next appointment I had, since now I was better, I walk into the hospital, Metropolitan Hospital, and the first thing they tell me is, you wanna go meet with the doctor, it's gonna cost you $500.
Wow.
Because I was no longer an emergency, right? Now that's the kind of society I continue to draw parallels. I'd rather have health services be like the fire department. Whether you got money or not, if you got a fire, we're gonna turn off the fire.
Is
If you're sick,
is Obamacare at all in danger right now?
I don't think it's in danger. I think there's parts that they have had to postpone. Not because it wasn't a good idea, because the administrative part is taking longer. And part of it is because of the intransigence of the Republicans. It's taking longer to implement these things. But Obama, the Affordable Health Care Act is the law of the land. And believe me, if you look at the prognosis 5 or 10 years from now, the Republicans are not picking up ground. And if something happens, and Lee, the way we started our conversation, you may have another Democratic president. You'll have another 2 appointees to the Supreme Court by a Democrat that will probably be Obama-friendly, right? That won't want to do in the Affordable Health Care Act. It will already have been implemented. So now everybody will be receiving these benefits.
Wow.
Now, could there have been more? Could there have been better? Yes. I think that there were a lot of clinks. But as President Obama's people say, if this were just a regular relationship, whatever mistakes we made, we would correct them, because that's what Congress people do. But we want to make one little correction. The first thing that the Republicans do is, bam, we're voting against all of the Obamacare. So you can't even adjust your plan to make it work, because they don't even want to.
So you're not allowed to tweak it all?
No tweaking, that's right, no
If
tweaking.
you have to tweak it, it puts it in danger where they want to backtrack on
That's
and
right.
whatever they agreed upon.
And they're counting on, if the Republicans were to win the presidency, to see if the president will defund parts of it,
Wow.
so that there won't be any money for it. In other words, you keep it because it's the law of the land. They might not be able to get rid of it, but you put the budget so that the budget, that's where the segue comes in with the sequester. The sequester, the same idea. They were trying to save money. They agreed on certain cuts, and now they're trying to tie those cuts. Say, well, look, we're willing to take back the sequester if you give up the medical benefits. It's some dangerous people. Let me tell you, it's not a good time for anybody in New York, and the Republican Party is not the party of Jacob Javits, right? Of Kemp. those were the good Republicans that were really concerned about a lot of New Yorkers. These Republicans have gotten so extreme to the right, right, that they, in a sense...
Is there a purpose for their behavior so extreme to the right and such an aggressive attitude and not trying to meet one another halfway as Americans?
Well,
what is this all about?
The redistricting plan helped that, because what it did, it would put mostly white people in white districts and conservative whites. So you have a lot of congressmen where their district is overwhelmingly white and conservative. So they don't have to worry what anybody else thinks. So they pander to their small group. So if you're like a Ted Cruz, for example, and you were elected by Senator Ted Cruz, you were elected by the Republican Tea Party people, and those are the people that vote for you and they're the ones that put you in power, then you don't care what Obama or that the country's changing in demography. Because in the district you represent, mostly white folks, mostly conservative white folks. If all these Latinos and blacks are coming of age and will soon be the majority of this country, I'll still be the person in that area.
So like a mule with blinders.
Yeah, so then what happens is they've locked the Tea Party in the right wing. What used to be a moderate sector is gone. The last person there is probably a Christie from New Jersey, who's a moderate, who probably couldn't compete because he's a moderate.
Wow.
You know, they're putting him up front now, but they understand that on most of the issues of the Tea Party, he would not. Who are they pushing? They're pushing Rand. Rand, civil libertarian guy who's a right winger, who his father said didn't vote for Martin Luther King's Day to be a holiday, who doesn't believe they should have laws against race discrimination.
Amazing.
Who had a former white supremacist on his staff helping him write his stuff. This is a real bad. A lot of these people, don't forget, the Republican Party has gotten so bad, they hate immigrants. I tell people, and I believe in a two-party system, but the way this right-wing party, Republican Party is going, you'd have to be local to vote for a Republican nowadays.
Well,
you know?
let me just say that's a tough one. That's a very tough one. Well, you know, Mr. Jordan, I just want to say, in behalf of the Grapevine family, I want to thank you so much for bringing us up to date about Obamacare and the perspective of things, what are out there and what's happening. We don't have words to thank you, and we hope that you give us an opportunity to be back again in the Grapevine.
Lee, it's always a pleasure. I get something out of these interviews as well, you know, and my best to all the folks out there.
And again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night for the Queen's Grapevine, and thank you so much for watching our program. We hope that it has been educational to you, for you to understand what the Obamacare program is all about, the expectation, and why it's important that you understand it. And again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night.